Hi, this is the video for Tuesday, February 23rd, and I'm going to take you through the little pieces of the agenda, and then I'll put in the analysis direct instruction part at the end of the video. So today, we're still focused on this idea of incommunicability, ineffability, the way that poetry exists to try to express something that can't be expressed. So that theme exists this whole day, and it exists into tomorrow as well. So we're still in this idea of the language we cannot speak. And those are the slides there for the lesson. Today, I did my direct instruction on Standard 5A, distinguishing between literal and figurative meanings of words and phrases. And today, specifically, we looked into figurative language and literary devices. Literary devices is kind of another word for figurative language. My model was The Ovenbird by Robert Frost. And then in small group, people prepared for discussion by working on their BGD entry. And then we moved into small group. So in small group, as you know by now, some people take advantage of that to simply work on their BGD independently. Others love the discussion and prepare and then have the discussion to sharpen their thoughts. Either way, the BGD is here for you. If you're watching the video, you can't participate in the small group discussion, but you can think on paper. You will be in your BGD analyzing Li Young Lee's This Room and Everything in It. So I'll get into the analysis now. All right, so day 2 of this small unit is creative analysis. We're not focused on craft, we're focused on our thinking. The imagination, the icebreaker question is conjure up a memory of place. What is one of your favorite places you've ever visited and why? So leading us in the class, we're just trying to think about how we can capture moments in our lives that we've really loved. The topic, I'm going to wind us towards something that is a little darker, which is that it's difficult to capture in our memories the beauty of a moment that's passed. How do we balance the wistful, peaceful quality of a good memory with the sadness and knowing that that memory and that moment is over? And I think that this neatly divides the world of poetry. There's plenty of poems out there that are focused on that first beautiful, peaceful feeling. And then there are poems that are concerned with the darker side of that moment being over. And that's where Frost takes us. So Robert Frost is a beloved American poet, and he has some beautiful things to write, but there's often a really dark underbelly to his poetry. He looks at images and he explores, well, what is the deep human truth that we are not comfortable with in this moment? So there's my assessment of his poetry, and yet he's one of my favorites. He's the only poet in America who's won 4 Pulitzers. He wrote a lot about New England, rural imagery of that. He was a farmer. He was the first to write and recite a poem at a presidential inauguration for JFK. I love in his poems the ends. They have these just amazing couplets that tie everything together. He is a master of form, and we aren't going to talk about that much today, but it's worth saying and noticing. This is our poem, and already, what is the form? I'll give you a hint. If it's square, it's a sonnet, and this is kind of a square. It's a sonnet. I'm not going to read it yet, but you've read it for class today. So our basic standard, very basic in its inception, but not when applied, is distinguish between literal and figurative meanings of words and phrases. Okay, why is that so hard? It's hard when applied to difficult texts. We lose focus on our purpose. What are we even doing here? Line endings throw us off. Complex sentences with meandering antecedents throw us off. And figurative language can throw us off. So we're going to just focus in laser-like on that 4th bullet point today. Always, 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 we're thinking purpose. What's the point of this poem? Now I'll read it. The Ovenbird by Robert Frost. An ovenbird is a type of bird. He's not talking about a turkey. It's just a cute little bird that's native to New England. There is a singer everyone has heard, loud, a midsummer and midwood bird, who makes the solid tree trunk sound again. He says that leaves are old and that for flowers, midsummer is to spring as 1 to 10. He says the early petal fall is past, when pear and cherry bloom went down in showers, on sunny days a moment overcast. And comes that other fall we name the fall. He says the highway dust is over all. The bird would cease and be as other birds, but that he knows in singing not to sing. The question that he frames in all but words is what to make of a diminished thing. What is this about? Already the message is coming through really strong for me that it's in those last two lines. The question that he's framing is, what do you do with something that is diminished? Why would it be diminished? Because it's dying somehow, decaying, or it's simply over. All right, let's get into it. So I've eliminated our barriers, some of them anyway. Line endings are gone. We're just looking at the words. We are looking at antecedents. In this case, it's a lot simpler than yesterday's. Who? The ovenbird. He? The ovenbird. It's the ovenbird everywhere. The bird, the bird, the bird. Is referred to as a he, which is interesting and worth its own analysis, but we're not going to do that today. I've highlighted this here, 1 to 10. I think that that is worth a pronoun identification because it's unclear what noun it's referring to, but it's going back to midsummer, and then 10 is back to spring. So it's like an analogy. Midsummer is to spring as 1 is to 10. And that helps me understand meaning. He is saying that midsummer is nothing compared to what has just ended, spring. He, and then lastly, what? And so the referent here goes back to the beginning of the sentence, that question, that's everything to this poem. What is the question? What to make of a diminished thing? What is what? How do you make meaning from something that is diminished? All right, pronoun antecedents, pronoun referents established. Not so much to glean there, so we're going to move into figurative language, which I've done in green. First, we're going to distinguish quickly between what does it mean, the differences between literal and figurative. Literal, literally, even though we use that word incorrectly all the time these days, means the actual denotation of a word. Denote, the meaning of a word. Figurative is the world we live in AP literature. What is the connotation of a word? Meanings with. What are the ideas and emotions associated with the words and phrases? And this is where it is so natural to use words like metaphor, simile, imagery. Those are the connotative devices that associate themselves with the words. So we'll be naturally finding those, and we'll pull 3 out from the reading. 3, metaphor, personification, and symbol. So I've chosen to highlight 4 words and phrases that are important, and I'm translating their meaning by collecting their connotations. That's what you're going to do for your big Google Doc today. So this move, I'll only ask you to do it for one meaning, one word or phrase, like really important moment. And I think for you, I'm asking you to connect it to the message, draw out a paragraph or so of meaning. But just for the practice, I'll do it with 4 here. So first, bird. I'm pausing on bird, and I wrote connotations. Birds usually sing, bringing sunshine, spring morning. This must be a metaphor. Of course it is. It's a poem about a bird. It's got to be about something else, or Robert Frost wouldn't be sharing it with us. I mean, it's going to be naturally about something else because he has a message he wants to get through this bird. So the connotations of birds are usually really happy, and I have that in my mind as I go about analyzing it. He makes the solid tree trunk sound again. Wow, that's personification. The bird isn't making anything happen like that. He is not divine in that way, but in the poem he is. He's able to make the tree trunks sound, and then the tree trunks themselves are kind of echoing and becoming a little bit human themselves. So it's personification in the way that he has the power to make these sounds come alive in the forest, as if he were doing it on purpose. And then my third point is he says that leaves are old and that for flowers, midsummer's to spring is 1 to 10. All right, that also to me is personification because it's a really human thought. First of all, he says, birds don't say anything, they sing or they twitter, they don't speak. But this poem has the bird telling us pieces of wisdom. And what does he say? He says, midsummer is not as great as the spring when everything came to life. Well, that's personification also because what a piece of human wisdom. Birds aren't reflecting on the past. They live in the moment. There's not a way that the bird has cognitive awareness of how months ago was different and better. It's simply responding to the environment it's currently in. So personification, because Frost is using the bird to communicate this really human piece of wisdom. The next few lines of the poem are a reiteration of that. Everything is different now. Everything is worse now. It was great before. Now we're into fall. And now the highway dust is everywhere. And then we get into the last lines. The bird would stop singing, but it knows in singing not to sing. We'll get back to that. Instead of highlight, the question he frames in all but words is what to make of a diminished thing. So here I've said the bird song is a symbol then. This last most important moment of his bird song is a question. The whole bird song is a symbol. A symbol for what? For our attempts at something that you try to explain or remember once it's over. How do you explain or remember the spring once it's over? The bird thinks you can't. The bird thinks in singing, I know not to sing. This is futile. So in identifying 4 important words and moments in the poem, I've extracted a lot of meaning from the bird and his bird song. And that brings me to my analysis. What is the message? What is the main idea? There they are. The bird is at first a metaphor for the joyfulness of memory. Birds sing, bringing sunshine spring morning, but his bird song quickly becomes more haunting than our usual associations. He is capable of human acts, even divine acts. He can bring the trees to life. Personification. This prophetic quality takes over. He is capable of great wisdom, judging for his listeners that the world around him used to be more beautiful. Personification, he says with his song, these things that we've looked at. In the end, the bird is a powerful symbol of our failed attempts at bird song in our art and our language. How do you explain or remember the spring, the beauty of a moment? Once it's over, simply put, you cannot. He knows in singing not to sing. So, metaphor, personification, symbol, yeah, we've identified those. That's great. But the more important thing is in context, they're pushing forward a message. An American poet who has wonderful lectures about poetry. He was born in Indonesia to Chinese parents, and after they were trying to escape some anti-Chinese sentiment in Indonesia and in the Asian continent, they ended up settling in America. America, not American, when he was 7. So he's lived here since and has taught in many universities. So what I want you to do is read his poem again. You're looking for one key line or phrase, not 4, but one really important line or phrase on which important meanings hinge or rest. Describe the connotations of the phrase, mention literary devices if they're in it, and then connect the phrase to the larger message of the poem. And that is your work for today.